Silas was sitting on an upside-down barrel just outside the front door of his family's house. Wood shavings fell gently to the ground as he whittled away at a stick with his knife. He was trying to carve an owl for his younger sister, but so far it looked more like a beaver or a mole than an owl. Silas had just turned 14. He still wasn't quite old enough to go with his father to the merchant trade, so he waited eagerly for his father to return. He worried about what might happen this year. He'd heard from some friends that the trades were really harsh this year. They had also lost a bunch of crops, which could mean bad news. His thoughts were broken by the sound of footsteps. Silas raised his eyes to see his father dropping off his empty cart and slowly making his way towards the house. "Hey, Dad, how did it go?" Looking at his son, all Thren was able to mutter was, "Hey, bud," and gave Silas a quick smile. Silas dropped his knife and owl that he had been carving and opened the door for his father. It crushed his heart to see his father this way. He was a fighter, not a farmer. He used to be in the King of Shilverst's royal guard before Malos had taken over and put everyone under his rule. Sure, Shilverst was really too small to have a king in the first place, but the royal guard was the real deal. His father didn't know much about the ancient art of elemental magic, but could hold his own better than almost anyone when it came to physical combat. After Malos had taken over, it had reduced almost everyone in the town to simple farmers, including him. "Dad's back," Silas called out as he stepped into the door, trying to lighten the mood. His mother, Iriana, responded cheerfully as she descended the stairs. She was a short, skinny woman with almost white, blonde hair and light blue eyes. She always had a kind smile on her face, even if the world was falling apart around her. "Hey, Thren, how was it?" she asked hopefully. Thren looked at her and then at Silas before responding. "Hey, buddy. Can you go find your sister and play with her outside for just a little bit? There's some things I need to discuss with your mom." His dad's words made a pit grow in Silas's stomach. He did his best to keep his expression neutral as a plan began to form in his mind. "Yeah, I can do that. Where is she?" "I'm right here," Aurelia said, skipping up behind Silas. Aurelia was 10 years old and looked very much like Iriana. She had the same blue eyes and the same almost white blonde hair. Even her personality was similar. She always seemed to be happy, even when days like this came around. "All right, Aurelia, let's go outside. Come on, I'll show you the owl I've been carving." "Yay," she said, skipping her way to the door. After they went outside, Silas picked up his owl from the ground and gave it to Aurelia. Silas handed her his creation, and her face twisted as though she had eaten something sour. "This doesn't look like an owl at all." Silas ignored the insult as he put away his knife. "Just stay here for a minute. I'll be right back." "Hey, you were supposed to play with me," she complained. "I will. Just give me a second," he shot back. "I just have to see something really quick. Then I'll play with you." Aurelia gave him a doubtful look as he ran to the other side of the house and pressed his ear against the outside wall of his parents' room. He had done this many times before. His parents always talked about private matters in their room. "I can't believe he only offered you 5 copper per sack. How does he expect us to be able to survive this winter with so little?" "I know. It seemed like he had no choice. Things are just bad everywhere." "I don't know what we're going to do, Thren. That's only a third of what we were offered last year, and we had twice as much crop then, too." Silas heard his mom begin to cry, and he pulled away from the wall. "This isn't good at all. We barely had enough food for everyone last year, and that was with having leftover potatoes at almost every meal." "Silas, quit spying! You said you would play with me," Aurelia said, stomping around the corner. Okay, he said, turning away from the wall. He led his sister away from the house, but his mind was elsewhere, desperately trying to think of something, anything that he could do to help his family. That night, Silas couldn't sleep. He kept on thinking of the events that had happened just over 10 years ago. He was only 4 at the time, but he still remembered parts of it very vividly. Malos, the Dark Mage, as most call him. He was said to be the most powerful user of darkness magic that ever lived, besides the original kings, of course. He had amassed an army of followers and overthrew the king of his own city, the capital of darkness called Azrindal. He then moved to the northern continents of Northrhind and the Scorched Lands, forcing the knees of the people there to bend at his power. After that, he continued the battle across all of Evandrel, with the goal of becoming the ultimate ruler of the entire world. Unfortunately, Shilverst was an easy target, and his town had also fallen to the tyrant. His father and the armies of the King of Shilvers tried to stop Melos, but his power was overwhelming. His mastery over the ancient elemental power of darkness was terrifying. With it, he had easily taken over the small yet growing town of Shilverst, bringing its inhabitants to their knees and killing the king in the process. Silas shivered in bed as he remembered the vivid memory of actually seeing him in the flesh. He had been on the top floor of one of the town buildings when it had all happened. He couldn't remember why he was there, but remembered his mother telling him to get away from the window and not to look. He wished he had listened. The image of Melos wearing black robes with a long hood that covered his head still haunted him at times. Although the hood made it difficult to see his face, Silas remembered being able to see the dark glowing eyes emanating from within his hood. His hands were glowing the same eerie black and purple color as he used darkness to wreak havoc over the town. It sent another tingle up his spine just thinking about it. After Melos had killed the king and forced the armies of Shilvers to surrender, he declared himself as the supreme ruler of all of Evandrel, and placed a heavy tax over the people. He placed guards around all the major cities he had conquered so that no one could enter or leave without permission. Silas turned over in his bed as he tried to shake the memory from his mind. Forcing himself to change the subject, he thought about his most recent problem. I need to do something to help my family survive the winter. But what? He pondered the question for a moment longer, then the thought of the old crypt just outside of town slithered into his mind. He and his friends had already been there once before. It took some thinking and a cunning plan to distract the guards, but ultimately they weren't caught. Memories of ancient artifacts, old trinkets, and other strange, lost, and forgotten objects of unknown worth filled his mind. A plan started slowly brewing in his mind at the memory. With the traveling merchant still in town for a few more days, there was a chance that he might be able to sell some of the more intact objects of the old crypt to one of them before they left. Liking the idea, he decided that in the morning he would find Samara and Torin. They'd think it was a good idea too and go with him. I'm sure that if we do find something of value, their families could use a little extra money too, he thought. And with that, he again tried to fall asleep without thinking of the soul-penetrating image of Melos. He awoke the next morning, a bit tired but determined. After completing his morning chores and eating one of the eggs that he had gathered from their chickens, Silas asked his mother if he could go out and assured her that he would be home in time for dinner. She agreed, but didn't really seem to hear him. He could tell that the financial trouble that they were in weighed heavily on her mind. I'll find something that will help us, Mother. I promise. With determination, he left his home and headed towards his best friend Torin's house. He, Torin, and Samara had gone to the ancient crypt before. It had been Torin's idea. What's the worst that could happen? He remembered Torin saying. They catch us and tell us to go home? He also remembered Samara telling them that being told to go home was definitely not the worst thing that could happen. She had heard stories of some kids who were caught trying to leave the town without permission and were flogged several times. We'll make sure to be careful, Silas thought to himself. His train of thought was then broken by a familiar voice. Silas! What's going on, brother? Torin said, walking towards him. Hey! Torin, what's up? Torin stretched his long arms upward into the air as he yawned. His muscular arms caught the eyes of a group of girls their age walking past on the way to do their morning chores, sending them into a giggle fest. Torin laid the icing on the cake with a wink which sent them running away blushing. Silas watched the girls run away, trying to keep from letting his jealousy get the better of him. If there was one person he wished he could compete with when it came to catching the female eye, it was definitely his best friend. Torin's father had been in the King's Guard at the same time as Silas's father. He might have even been his trainer at one point. Silas couldn't remember. The two had become good friends, and the friendship was passed down from fathers to sons. Torin and Silas found themselves doing almost everything together. Yeah, I'm all right, Torin said with a smug smile, running his hand through his long hair. Brant ripped my father off at the trade yesterday, though, and now we're worried about having enough money to get through this winter. Yeah, Silas replied. The same thing happened to my family, too. That's why I wanted to come and see you. I have an idea about how we can make some more money for our families, to help them out. Torin raised an eyebrow. Oh, yeah? And what is this master plan? I hope it's better than the plan you had that one time to spy on old man Uthrin. Silas punched Torin in the arm. Hey, something is going on with that guy. I don't think he's just an old man like you say he is. Plus, how was I supposed to know that Samara would see that snake in the garden just as we were about to get into prime spying position? Torin rubbed his arm and laughed. Hey, take it easy. I'm only joking. All I'm saying is that you may need me to look over your plan and fine-tune it, or it might end in us having to repair a fence all summer long again. So what is it? We need to find Samara first, then I'll tell you, Silas replied. We have to keep it super secret, so I want to wait until we're all together first. Torin gave Silas a wry smile. Yep, I knew you liked her. Silas punched him in the arm again, this time harder. Shut up. No, I don't. Torin grinned and cocked a taunting eyebrow. Yeah, okay. Sure thing, buddy. We can wait until we find Samara to, just keep it more secret then. He finished his sentence with a wink, rubbing in the sarcasm that was already dripping from his words. Silas wanted to hit him again, but decided against it. Torin was a lot bigger than he was and didn't want to chance getting slugged back. Let's just go look for her, Silas said, starting off in the direction of her house. Torin gave a slight chuckle, put his hands in his pockets, and whistled a tune as he followed Silas. Samara cleared her mind and took in a deep breath. This time for sure, she said, looking at the illustration in her book one last time. Thumbs together, palms facing away from your body, index fingers together, making a heart shape. Got it. Now the rest of the fingers together at the diagonal, making a diamond shape at the top. She closed her eyes, then reached deep, deeper than she had ever reached before. She could feel something this time, a small pool of energy deep within her core. Remembering the text of the book, she concentrated on bringing that pool of energy up into her arms. It tingled slightly as it rose from the middle of her stomach, through her arms and into her hands. A soft, golden light met her gaze as she opened her eyes. I did it, she said out loud, a smile forming on her face. The heart and diamond shapes that she made with her fingers glowed with a golden misty energy filling in where the air once was, the rest of her hands emanating a bright yellow aura. Ecstatic at her newfound success, she quickly looked at the book again to see what the next step was. Hey-ya, Samara! A voice yelled out from behind her. Startled, Samara yelped and jumped forward, breaking the symbol she had made with her hands. The yellow light faded into the air as the tingling sensation slipped away. Spinning around to see the culprit of her distraction, her eyes met Torin and Silas standing behind her. You idiot, Torin, she yelled. I was doing it. I had it that time. She stomped over to Torin, fists raised high, ready to smack him. Torin quickly put up his hands in defense and took a few steps backward. Whoa, hey, take it easy. I didn't do anything. What do you mean you were doing it? What were you even doing? It looked like you were just standing there. She ignored his stream of questions and took several swings at him, which Torin easily parried aside. It was times like this that Torin was grateful that he had trained with his father in hand-to-hand combat ever since he was a little kid. Stop blocking me! Samara angrily growled. You broke my concentration. I finally conjured some light magic, then you ruined it. She swung once more, aiming for his face, but Torin easily caught her hand in his. Wait, what? He asked. You mean you actually saw light energy in your hands? Yes, she spat back at him. And I was about to see if I could use it on that beetle over there. She pointed towards a book that sat on a table where she had been standing. A beetle that looked to have been accidentally stepped on laid on its back, moving its legs back and forth slowly as if trying to run away. I was going to heal him, she exclaimed. Silas walked over and examined the beetle more closely. Its attempt at escaping Samara's experiment didn't seem to be going very well. He then turned his attention towards the book on the table. It had definitely seen better days. Its leather cover was faded and cracking in places. Several pages also looked to be on the brink of falling out. Silas thumbed through several of the pages, noticing that most of them had corners and edges that were torn, or sections of words that were badly faded. Turning back to the page Samara was on, he looked at the diagram of the hands making a symbol of a heart and a diamond. Where did you get this, Samara? I got it from Old Man Uthrin a long time ago, she said, pulling her hand away from Torin. She walked over to Silas and shut the book. He gave it to me as a gift after we fixed his fence last summer. He really is a nice guy if you just talk to him. What's the book about? Torin asked. It looks like it's a book on light magic, Silas replied. Specifically, Samara said, swiping the book from his hands, light magic and how to use it to heal. But why would Old Man Uthrin have a book on light magic? Torin asked, walking towards Samara. I mean, he's just an old guy that tells a bunch of stories. Samara sent him a look of disgust. You know, you're really as dumb as you look. Torin grinned, the insult not fazing him one bit. He used to be a great light mage, so you know. He even tried to stand up to Malos before he gained power over Evandrel. What? Nah, no way, Torin said, rolling his eyes. It's true! He was injured really bad during one of the battles, so he just doesn't do much anymore. Well, if he's a great light mage, why doesn't he just heal the injury? Samara twisted her face. I don't know, Torin. Why don't you just go ask him? I believe what he says, though. He told me a lot of stories of when he used to be in the Council of Light. He's done a lot of really cool things. That's awesome, Silas said to Samara. I could definitely see that. I've always thought there was more to Old Man Uthrin than what meets the eye. Torin looked at Silas and gave him a wink and a little thumbs up next to his hip. Silas shot him a scowl but tried not to make it visible enough for Samara to see. Yeah, he's way more than just an old man, Samara continued. I've learned a lot from him since last summer, and I almost had my first successful spell just a minute ago before you two showed up. She looked at Torin, giving him a death glare. He just shrugged his shoulders and gave a sorry but not really look at her. Hey, Samara, Silas continued, I have an idea on how we could maybe make a little extra money for our families before winter. Did your family do well at the trade? Samara looked at the ground. No, we didn't get much at all, actually. I don't like thinking about it. A doubtful expression crossed her face as she looked back up to Silas. So, what is this plan? It better not be something stupid. Torin let a laugh escape his lips but quickly covered his mouth, faking a cough. Silas glared at him, then turned his attention back to Samara. It's not stupid, but we need to be sure that no one finds out about it. Let's go to the Black House, and I can explain. The Black House was code for an old blacksmith shop that had gone abandoned ever since Malos had taken over. It was their little place where they could get away from everyone and everything. It was on the side of town that had been almost completely burned to the ground by Malos. In fact, the blacksmith shop was one of the only buildings that were still standing on that side of town, so not many people went over there. They arrived at the blacksmith shop just as a cloud covered the sun, sending shadows dancing over the rubble that was spread across the ground. It really was a shame that none of them had seen this part of the town before Malos had destroyed it. Remains of shops, places to eat, and other buildings that weren't intact enough to recognize their purpose lay scattered amongst the now deserted streets. They carefully entered the blacksmith shop, trying to avoid stepping on any hidden upturned nails, then lit the lone standing lantern that they had placed there when they had first discovered the building, and shut the door. So, let's hear it, Torin started. What is this amazing plan of yours? All right, Silas explained. I was thinking we could go visit the ancient crypt again. You're joking, right? Samara said, cutting him off. We almost got caught last time, and I am not doing the distraction again. Torin and Silas both laughed, the remembrance of what they had to do the last time they visited the crypt to distract the guards joyfully entering their minds. Samara was a gorgeous young woman, especially to Silas. Her emerald green eyes and dark brown hair packaged into her short, slim body hit all the right checkboxes for basically every boy in Shilverst. Silas had convinced himself that there wasn't a girl alive more beautiful than she was. Because of her good looks, the first time they went to the ancient crypt, they had Samara get into one of her swimming gowns and complain to the guards about not being able to go to the lake just outside the town. While she complained to them that it was so hot she could barely even stand it, they were able to sneak by. Funny enough, they actually let her through, and she was able to go to the crypt with the two of them. We won't make you do that again, Silas replied with a smile, even though it was basically a flawless plan. No, this time I have a different plan. Why do you even want to go in there again? Torin asked. And how is it going to help our families to get more money before winter comes? You saw all the old stuff that was down there, Silas replied. There has to be some stuff down there worth something to one of the merchants in town. We could see if we could trade it to one of them before they leave. They all paused for a moment before Samara responded. It does seem like a pretty good idea. There was a lot of really cool stuff down there last time we went, and some of it did look like it could be valuable. Torin shrugged. Meh, sounds fine to me, I guess. So, what do you propose we do this time instead of having Miss Sunshine over here flirt with the guards? Samara sent him a scowl, but decided not to say nothing. I was thinking about it last night, Silas explained. You know how the merchants are allowed to go in and out basically as they please? Torin and Samara exchanged glances. Yeah, so what? So, what if we pretended to be merchants ourselves? Torin, you almost look like an adult, you are so tall and broad. And Samara and I could hide in some barrels that we put in my dad's wagon. You could pull us right through. Don't they check the contents of whatever you are carrying through? I mean, it would be stupid if they didn't, Samara responded doubtfully. I thought of that too, Silas explained. We have a bunch of old potatoes that went bad because we didn't have enough money to get fertilizer for all the fields. We could get in the barrels, and then Torin could pour a bunch of the old rotten potatoes on top of us. They smell so bad that the guards wouldn't check very closely at all. Torin could say that he's taking them back to his hometown as pig slop or something. Ew, gross, Samara complained. I am not going to dump a bunch of nasty potatoes on my head. You wouldn't be doing the dumping. I would. I like it, Torin said, smiling. Yeah, of course you would like it, Samara shot back. Listen, it really wouldn't be that bad, Silas continued. If you want, you could put a couple of our empty potato sacks over your head first as a cover. Then you wouldn't even get that dirty. It would be just a little hard to breathe, but just for a little bit is all. Samara frowned. I still don't like it, but it would be nice to be able to help my family out. And there really is a lot of stuff down there that we could probably sell. She pondered for a moment longer before responding. All right, I'll do it. But Torin, I swear, if you aren't careful when dumping those potatoes over my head. She ended the sentence with a nasty look betraying the message loud and clear, to which Torin just smiled, a slightly devious smile. It might be worth it, he said quietly. What was that? Samara shot back. Torin chuckled. Nothing, nothing. Come on, guys. What are we waiting for? Let's do this thing. And that's the end of chapter 1.